You'll be fine going alone, right? Those were my sister's last words before everything fell apart. My name is Leilani Parker, and I was 9 months pregnant when it happened. It was supposed to be one of the happiest weeks of my life, the week I finally became a mother. But instead, it turned into the most terrifying, humiliating, and lonely experience I've ever faced. My older sister, Renee, was the only family I had left nearby. Our parents had moved to Florida after Dad's retirement, and since my husband worked overseas, Renee promised she'd be there for me until he returned. At first, I believed her. She helped me set up the nursery, drove me to my prenatal checkups, and even picked baby names with me. But as the months passed, her tone began to change. She'd roll her eyes whenever I mentioned doctor appointments or ask if I really needed her to come along. "I've got a life too, Leilani," she'd sigh. "You can't expect me to drop everything just because you're pregnant." I tried to be understanding. Renee was always the independent one, outgoing, social, the kind of woman who needed constant excitement. I was quieter, happier with my small apartment, my books, and the baby things I'd neatly arranged for the arrival day. But the cracks in her support started showing early. The night my contractions first began, small, inconsistent ones, I called her, my hands trembling as I clutched my belly. "Renee, I think it's starting. My stomach hurts every 10 minutes. Her voice was distant, drowned out by loud music in the background. "Leilani, relax. It's probably just Braxton Hicks. You're fine. I'm at Jason's party right now. I'll call you tomorrow." Click. That was it. "No, are you okay? No, want me to come over?" Just silence. I spent that night pacing in my living room, alone, timing the pains and whispering to my unborn baby that everything would be okay. The next morning, I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Renee had always been like this, self-absorbed, impulsive, but not cruel. Maybe she'd make it up to me later. By the end of the week, the contractions had stopped. But my anxiety hadn't. I was exhausted, from carrying all the weight, from cooking, from cleaning, from pretending I wasn't scared out of my mind. One afternoon, I dropped a glass while washing dishes. It shattered across the floor, and before I knew it, tears poured down my cheeks. I wasn't crying over the mess. I was crying because I realized I had no one to lean on. That evening, Renee showed up unannounced, wearing a cropped jacket and sunglasses even though it was almost dark. "Why do you look like that?" she asked, stepping over the broken glass I hadn't finished cleaning. "I've been having pain again," I admitted softly. "Can you take me to the hospital tomorrow? Just to check everything's okay?" She frowned as if I'd asked her to donate a kidney. "Tomorrow? I've got plans, Leilani. Can't you Uber or something?" "You're not helpless." Her words stung. "I just don't want to go alone." "You'll be fine going alone," she snapped, tossing her keys onto the counter. "You're not the first woman to have a baby." I didn't argue. I just nodded and said, "Okay." That night, I barely slept. Every kick from my baby felt sharper, heavier, almost as if my body knew what was coming. The next morning, Renee's mood had flipped. She was humming as she packed a suitcase. "Where are you going?" I asked. She smirked. "Jason booked a weekend at Lake Harmony. I need a break before you pop." "You're leaving this weekend?" "My due date's in 5 days." She waved her hand dismissively. "If something happens, call an ambulance." "Don't be dramatic." I stood frozen as she zipped her suitcase and grabbed her purse. She kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. "Try to relax, okay? Stress isn't good for the baby." Then she walked out, heels clicking against the floor, and the door slammed shut. That sound would echo in my mind for days. By evening, my cramps returned. I tried to breathe through them, timing each wave like the nurse had taught me in class. But by midnight, the pain was unbearable. I called Renee, straight to voicemail. I texted her again and again. "Please answer. I think it's time. I need help. I can't drive. Renee, please." No reply. The next contraction hit so hard I dropped my phone. I barely made it to the couch before another came. The only thing louder than my breathing was the thunderstorm raging outside. Finally, I forced myself to grab my car keys. I couldn't wait anymore. I shuffled to my old blue Honda parked downstairs, clutching my belly. The rain soaked through my clothes, but I didn't care. I was shaking. From fear, from pain, from betrayal. As I sat behind the wheel, trying to steady my breathing, my water broke. The warm rush spread across the seat and panic surged through me. I reached for my phone again and dialed Renee one last time. When she finally answered, her voice was slurred, laughter and music in the background. "What, Leilani?" "I'm kind of busy." "My water broke," I gasped. "Please, I need you to come." "I can't drive." A pause. Then laughter. "Oh my God, are you serious? You always pick the worst timing. Just call a cab, okay?" And then, click, she hung up. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. My heart raced. I was alone, drenched, and in labor, sitting in the parking lot outside my apartment as the rain poured harder. I wanted to scream, but instead I whispered to the tiny heartbeat inside me, "Hold on, baby. Mommy's gonna get us help." And that's when the pain hit again, sharper, deeper, unstoppable. The world blurred, and before I knew it, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, everything was white. The ceiling, the curtains, the lights above my bed. For a second, I didn't know where I was. Then I heard the faint sound of beeping and a newborn's cry. I turned my head slowly, every muscle screaming in pain. A nurse was standing beside me, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. "Congratulations, Mama," she said softly. "You and your baby are safe." My throat tightened. I had her?" "You sure did," she smiled. "You passed out in the parking lot. Someone found you just in time and called an ambulance." Parking lot. The words made my stomach twist. The last thing I remembered was sitting in my car, rain pounding against the windshield, Renee's laughter echoing in my ear before everything went dark. Tears blurred my vision as the nurse gently placed my baby in my arms. She was so small, her fingers barely bigger than a paperclip, her face soft and pink, her breathing calm and steady. I whispered her name, Maya. For a few minutes, the world felt still. Nothing mattered except her tiny heartbeat against my chest. But peace doesn't last long when betrayal still lingers in your veins. The nurse helped me feed Maya, then mentioned something that made my blood run cold. "It's a miracle you were found. A delivery driver saw your car lights flashing and checked inside. You were unconscious. He said there was no one else around. No one else. Renee had left me. Left me in labor. Left me to die." When the nurse stepped out, I picked up my phone. I had 16 missed calls. Not from Renee, but from the hospital billing office and an unknown number. I scrolled through my messages. Renee's name appeared only once. "Glad you made it. Don't make a big deal about it. I told you to call an ambulance." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. No apology, no visit. No concern, I called her. Straight to voicemail. Again and again. By the third try, a text popped up. "Stop calling. I'm at the lake. You're fine now. Chill." Something inside me broke. She knew I was alone. She knew I was in pain. And she left me anyway. For a weekend getaway. Over the next 2 days, the hospital room became my entire world. I learned how to feed Maya, how to change her, how to breathe again. But the loneliness never left. I watched other mothers surrounded by family and flowers, laughter filling their rooms. Mine stayed silent. No visitors. No gifts, just me and my daughter, the nurses noticed. One of them, an older woman named Carla, finally asked, "Where's your family, sweetheart?" I forced a smile. "Busy, I guess." She gave me a look, the kind that says I know you're lying, but I'll let it go. By the time I was discharged, I had made up my mind. I wouldn't let Renee near us again. But when I got home, her car was in the driveway. I froze. My stomach tightened. There she was, standing in my kitchen like nothing had happened, scrolling through her phone. "Oh, finally," she said, looking up. "You took forever. The hospital called me about some paperwork. I told them to send the bill to you." I stared at her, holding Maya close. "You left me," I said quietly. She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic again. You're alive, aren't you?" "I could have died, Renee. My baby could have died." "Oh, please." "You always exaggerate everything." "You were fine. I couldn't believe what I was hearing." She laughed as if it was all one big joke. Then she glanced at Maya and frowned. "So that's her? She's smaller than I expected." I flinched. "Get out," I whispered. She blinked, surprised. "Excuse me?" "Get out!" Her smile disappeared. "Wow, you're seriously kicking me out after everything I've done for you?" "What you've done to me," I corrected. "Not for me." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She grabbed her purse and slammed the door behind her. But the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating. Because I knew Renee wasn't done. She never was. 3 days later, my phone buzzed nonstop. Friends from town were messaging me screenshots, posts from Renee's social media. There she was, posing at the lake, wine in hand, captioned, "My little sister had her baby." I couldn't make it because some people can't plan properly, but whatever. Knew want a drama queen, and my heart sank. She'd twisted the story, made me look ungrateful, careless, even selfish. The comments were worse. "Poor Renee. You deserve a break." Some people just crave attention. It was like being punched in the chest. I wanted to disappear. But then I looked at Maya, sleeping peacefully in my arms, and something inside me shifted. No more silence. No more letting her define me. If Renee wanted to play dirty, fine. But this time, I wasn't the weak one. I started gathering every message, every voicemail, every timestamp from that night, proof that she'd left me alone in labor. I didn't know how yet. But I was going to make sure the world saw who she really was. And when I did, there'd be no coming back for her. Revenge wasn't something I ever believed in. But betrayal, the kind that cuts deep enough to almost kill you, it changes a person. After Renee's post went viral, people in our town started whispering. At the grocery store, I'd hear them say, "Did you see what her sister posted?" Poor Renee. I wanted to scream, to tell them I wasn't the villain. But I stayed quiet, because I knew silence was my weapon now. That night, after I put Maya to sleep, I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through every message Renee had sent me. There it was, proof of everything. "Stop calling. I'm at the lake. You're fine now. Chill." You always pick the worst timing. Each word made my hands tremble. Not with sadness anymore, but with purpose. I opened my laptop and began typing. It wasn't anger that guided me. It was truth. The post started simple. "This is what really happened the night my sister left me in labor." I told the story exactly as it happened. The rain, the pain, the fear, the silence. I attached screenshots of our messages, time-stamped calls, even the hospital report that showed I'd been found unconscious in the parking lot. And then I added one final line. She called me a drama queen. But drama doesn't leave you bleeding in the rain while your baby's life hangs by a thread. I hesitated for a second before hitting post. Then I did. Within minutes, my phone blew up. At first, a few friends commented, "Wait, this can't be real." "Leilani, I'm so sorry you went through this." Then strangers joined in. Thousands. By midnight, my story had over 20,000 shares. People were furious. Women, mothers, nurses, everyone had something to say. "She left you alone while in labor? That's not family. That's cruelty. You're stronger than she'll ever be." For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. But Renee did. The next morning, she showed up at my door, sunglasses hiding her swollen eyes. "How could you?" she snapped the moment I opened the door. How could I? I repeated. You left me to die. She crossed her arms. You ruined my life over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I laughed bitterly. You abandoned your pregnant sister in a parking lot, Renee. That's not a misunderstanding. That's who you are. She looked around, panicking. People are sending me death threats. Jason dumped me. My job's threatening to fire me. I stared at her, holding Maya in my arms. You wanted attention, I said softly. Now you have it. Her mask finally cracked. She started crying, the ugly kind of crying, the one that shakes your whole body. Leilani, I didn't mean for it to go that far. I couldn't handle the pressure. You were always the fragile one. I didn't think it was real. I almost pitied her, almost. But then I remembered lying in that car, rain flooding around me, praying for help that never came. And the pity vanished. Get out, I said quietly. Leilani, please, I said get out. She froze, tears streaking her face. For once she didn't argue. She turned, opened the door, and left, slowly this time. When the door shut behind her, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The next week, everything changed. People from our town, even those who'd once whispered behind my back, reached out with support. Someone started a fundraiser to help me replace my car seat and supplies that had been ruined that night. A local news channel contacted me for an interview about maternal abandonment and family neglect, and when the segment aired, I didn't hold back. I told them everything, not to shame Renee, but to show other women they weren't alone. Sometimes, I said into the camera, the people you trust the most will hurt you the worst. But you can survive it. You can still rise. That line, it went viral again. By then, Renee had deleted all her accounts. She moved out of town quietly, leaving behind the reputation she'd built on lies. But I didn't hate her anymore. I'd done what I needed to do. Not for revenge, but for peace. A few weeks later, I was sitting in the park with Maya sleeping in her stroller. The sun was warm, the sky clear, and for the first time in months, I felt free. A woman approached me, someone I didn't know. You're Leilani, right? She asked softly. I just wanted to say thank you. Your story, it helped me leave my sister's house. She treated me the same way. I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. Sometimes healing comes in the most unexpected ways. I looked down at Maya, tiny fingers curled around the edge of her blanket. See, baby? I whispered. We made it. A year passed. A whole year since that night in the parking lot. People still recognized me sometimes. You're the woman from that story. But life had finally slowed down. Maya had turned one. She could stand now, wobbly and fearless. Her giggle bright enough to melt any leftover bitterness in me. I'd moved to a smaller house outside the city. One with a little porch, wildflowers by the mailbox, and neighbors who waved instead of whispered. I worked remotely as a graphic designer, balancing deadlines with nap times. Every morning, I'd make coffee, look at my daughter's sleepy face, and whisper the same thing. We made it, baby. We really did. Renee hadn't contacted me once. Not after the article, not after the interview, not even on Maya's birthday. For a while, I wondered if she'd ever feel sorry. But some wounds stop needing an apology. They just need distance. Then, one rainy afternoon in late October, someone knocked on my door. I opened it and froze. Renee stood there. Her hair was shorter, her eyes hollow, her clothes plain and wrinkled. She looked small. Can I come in? She asked quietly. I hesitated. The sound of thunder rolled behind her, a haunting echo of that night. But I stepped aside. She sat on the couch, hands trembling in her lap. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, I lost everything, Leilani. I said nothing. My job fired me. Jason left. I tried moving, but people recognize me everywhere. The internet doesn't forget. I sighed softly. That's not my fault. I know. Her voice cracked. And that's what hurts most. She looked up at me, tears pooling in her eyes. I came to say I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed to say it. For the first time, she didn't sound defensive or cruel. She sounded human. I nodded slowly. Renee, do you know what haunted me most after that night? I asked. She shook her head. It wasn't the pain or the fear. It was realizing the person I trusted most looked at me, suffering, and chose to leave. She covered her mouth, sobbing silently. I'm sorry, she whispered again. I thought you'd be fine. I didn't understand how serious it was. I was selfish, stupid, and cruel, I finished. She nodded. The silence between us stretched. Then Maya waddled into the room, clutching her stuffed rabbit, babbling nonsense. Renee looked at her, eyes wide. She's beautiful, she whispered. She looks like you. Maya giggled, then toddled over to me, clinging to my leg. I looked down at my daughter, the living reminder of everything I'd survived, and then back at Renee. You can't undo what happened, I said softly. But you can learn from it. Don't ever let your comfort cost someone else's life again. She nodded, wiping her face. I will, I promise. When she left, I didn't feel anger or satisfaction. Just peace. Because forgiveness isn't about letting them back in. It's about letting yourself move on. A few months later, I received a letter from a women's shelter downtown. Inside was a short note. Leilani, your story inspired one of our donors to fund a new program for single mothers. We're naming it Maya's Place. I sat there holding that letter, tears blurring the ink. Maya's Place. The same name I whispered to keep myself alive in that parking lot. That night, I took Maya to the porch and watched the sunset turn the sky gold. The world felt soft again, like it was finally forgiving me too. I realized then, justice had already happened. Not through courtrooms or revenge posts, but through survival. Through proving that kindness could grow even from betrayal. And maybe that's the real revenge. Not making them pay, but living so well that they have to watch you rise anyway. I held Maya close and whispered, "Thank you for saving me, baby. You're my reason. You're my new beginning." The wind carried her laughter through the air, and for the first time since that awful night, I felt truly free.